quite a stirring town. Some people were upset. We call this looking beyond the traffic stop. Senior Officer Crate made a motor vehicle stop in the regular duties of a patrolman, made some observations that led him to investigate and solve that case off a motor vehicle stop. Absolutely a great police work by Mike. So here is a certificate of merit for Mike and a pin that he can wear in his uniform to recognize that he's been served with a certificate of merit. So thank you very much, Mike. Second one, this officer doesn't know he's getting this, because he probably wouldn't show up. He's very humble. Corporal Smith, please come up. So Corporal Smith is also receiving a certificate of merit. We'd like to recognize Corporal Smith for his expedient response to the January 9th for mutual aid to Lebanon for the Dare structure fire. His first response and decisive actions helped save the lives of several citizens is an excellent example of the dedication officers we have serving the Enfield community, and we are proud to have him as a member of our team. So Corporal Smith lives not far from the Dairy Twirl in Lebanon, had just got home after a 10-hour shift, heard that call come in and knew that he could be there before and most other officers would be there. He was one of the very few, he was one of the first few officers on scene and helped save the lives of those people that were stuck on the roof of that fire. So I want to give him his certificate of merit and his pen for merit that he can wear in his uniform to represent the, his community, his dedication, his service. All here, I'd like all my staff to please stand up and be recognized for your dedication to our community and the excellent service you provide to Enfield.
Chief, would you introduce your other officers, please?
Sure. So Lieutenant Fry has been with the department for about 17 years now. Corporal Smith, Caleb Bover, Matt Ocker, and obviously Mike Crate, and then Emily's hiding on the end there. She's our CSAC, Public Safety Administrative Coordinator. So this, I couldn't do my job without them. They make it easy. They make me look good. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think there's much to add, but it's great that our police are going above and beyond, helping our neighboring communities and always out there.
We have a fine police force.
We do.
Okay, the business of the evening. We have 3 separate public hearings, each for an article that will be on the warrant for town meeting. We will take them one at a time. We will start with public hearing number 1, representing Article 6. In accordance with RSA 33:8-A, bonds or notes over $100,000 to discuss improvements to the municipal water system, including but not limited to the interconnection of the new marsh wells, preparation of applications for funding sources which become available, hydrogeological work, design and construction of a new marsh well field pump house and installation of associated controls and equipment, and replacing approximately 5,500 linear feet of 1903 era distribution main, currently estimated at $2,750,000. Entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so this is the time when anybody who wishes to speak to the article is welcome to. Are there any comments from the board? Jim, would you like to just bring everybody up to speed? I forgot, we did it at our last meeting, but why don't you bring people up to speed?
Yeah, so the project is, there's 2 pieces to it. Number 1 is the replacement of some 1903 era water main on the streets, Bay Street, Shed Street, Wells Street, and Stevens Street are the primary ones. Those are the streets we've had a bunch of breaks over the last 6 or 8 years. And it's 1903 line, which is long overdue for being replaced. And then the second piece of it is to bring the 2 new wells that the town has drilled at the Marsh well field line, and to create a pump house where we can do some water treatment and have a better place to house pump controls and the SCADA system and that sort of thing. And so we replied to the state of New Hampshire for the state revolving fund. And we got a very favorable package. I think we were number 10 out of 104 or 5. And there was only 18 that were gonna get funded, so we're kind of right in the middle of the funded pack. And part of the package includes principal forgiveness, and in this case, and for 1 year only, it's gonna be 50%. So really, it's almost doubling our dollars. We also are applying for some other grants that may prove out too, so. And some lead remediation will be included as part of this. Some of the lead pipes that we find occasionally are on these old 1903 Arrow lines.
Is this the last of the 1903 pipe? This is-
No,
Okay.
that's kind of the second third of it.
Mhm.
We did about a third of it 1.5 years ago. And this will be the second, and then there's still quite a bit on Route 4.
Mhm.
But that's gonna be huge money because anytime you're on 4, it's very expensive and time consuming to do anything on that road. But that will be probably the final round of 1903.
Other comments from the board?
What's the line made of, Jim?
The 1903?
Yeah.
It's a cast iron pipe. Yep.
And another small piece of context for folks is, I think it was 2018, 2019, the town did an assessment of our water infrastructure. And this is sort of executing the plan to bring it up to speed. We had deferred maintenance for decades. And now we're sort of bringing it all back up to where it needs to be. Comments from the public?
Can I interject just briefly? I would just note that both the select board and the budget committee unanimously support this.
Seeing no comment from the public, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Right.
Aye.
There are no decisions to be made from these public hearings, these are information sessions, so we can move directly to public hearing number 2 for Article 7 in accordance with RSA 33:8-A regarding bonds or notes over $100,000 to discuss a watershed management plan for Crystal Lake currently estimated at $100,000 and application for clean water state revolving funds. It being understood that repayment of the loan funds may include up to 100% principal forgiveness in the amount up to $100,000 with minimal or no impact on the tax rate, Entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. I don't think we have a real presentation for this, but this is sort of a continuation of work that's being done for the Mascoma watershed in conjunction with Lebanon. This would be a second round to continue through the Crystal Lake watershed. And as it says, there's 100% forgiveness on the loan. So in the end, it only would cost the town a minimal amount of sort of administrative hours, which people are already spending. Other comments from the board?
It does say may include up to 100%.
I
told.
Yeah.
Mhm. There are questions or comments from the public? All right, seeing none, entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, public hearing number 3, in accordance with RSA 40:14, relative to the adoption of SB 2 by petition, shall we adopt the provisions of RSA 40:13, known as SB 2, to allow official ballot voting on all issues before the town of Enfield on the second Tuesday of March? Entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Yep. Please.
I just muted them.
Thank you. It's always much more difficult when I'm sharing.
Bruce, I think you do have a couple slides, right, that have been prepared in past years, just to share. And wrote as lead petitioner, but Deb, would you like to, when we get the slides up, just sort of speak, give a brief rundown of what SBQ is?
Thank you.
Sure.
You have,
I'm sorry, you have what? I was busy muting people and I wasn't paying enough attention.
Eric said that we had slides.
well, I think this is just,
This is just what you have.
Just-
this is how it's held in 2 sessions. And if anybody is interested in this information, it's obviously publicly available and can be sent out. But Deb Ford was one of the petitioners and
Yes, so, this will be the 3rd year that we've tried to, pass this SB2 so that all people have the opportunity to vote on the second Tuesday in March. Basically, it's the same format as what the school district uses. There's a deliberative session where, I did invite everybody in the town of Enfield to come to that, and I think some people did. Just to see what it was like, but it's basically like the town meeting, where the warrant articles are all presented. And, discussion is opened up for the public to ask any questions. You can modify the warrant articles at that meeting as well. But the actual voting all takes place on the official ballot on the second Tuesday in March. So it's more equitable for everybody to be able to vote on. A lot of people can't come to the town meeting on Saturday. I know everybody wishes that everybody could. But, I mean, even this year, I've been invited to a 90th birthday party that I'm not going to miss. That is on Saturday afternoon. And, people have conflicts and it is just not fair that everybody can't vote. So that's why I keep pushing this and, the response this year was incredible. We have a plan to send out an email when it's time to vote. And I have 50 emails from people, and a lot of those are couples. So there's a growing interest in having the vote all on the one day.
are there any comments from the board?
I have a question.
Sure.
Is there, I feel like I have heard this, but I don't actually know. Is there a history of this having been passed and then switched back? Can I just understand that context?
The town felt that, the select board felt that it wasn't working very well. Primarily, I would say from what, I was not part of that process. But when I was told by fellow selectmen over the years was that simply not many people or enough people came to the deliberative session. So that's one of the questions I have about the school's deliberative session. How many people come to that? Do you have a
Well, it depends
estimate of
on-
numbers?
If there's nothing on the warrant, I mean, the school district budget is up 1.2%. So there wasn't a lot of interest in changing that except for 3 people from Grafton. But typically, if there is, like when we were trying to get the school, high school renovation and addition passed, we filled up the Indian River School cafeteria. It was full, and that took 3 years to get through. So I know the 3-year history. The same, when there were people trying to get rid of the superintendent, this is all stuff I said last year at the town meeting. That we had to move to the high school auditorium because we couldn't hold everybody in the river school. And that high school auditorium was full. So when there's something to come out for,
3,500 to 9.
right, when there's something to come out for, I believe people do. If we were to go back in time and look at the 2 projects that passed 3 years ago, if that was at that deliberative session instead of the town meeting, people would have come out to that. People come out and I think people are paying attention. As I've said before, there are plenty of opportunities to learn about everything that the town is trying to do. And sometimes it does take a couple years to educate the whole population. So I understand where you're coming from. I was a business administrator for the school district. So, yes.
Eric, can I add to that?
Yep.
So, Alice, I guess the other thing to know is that it happened in a very different time period. It happened when social media and wasn't no, there was no social media, and even websites weren't widely available, and internet access was basically nothing. So you didn't have the breadth of information we have now. I know when I was the chair of the school board, I absolutely hated SB2 because we didn't have a way to disseminate information, and it was really, really hard. And now it's very different, right? You can email folks, you can post information, you can look on it. So we're just in a very different time. There was a time when I was the lead petitioner to change back to a town meeting style for the school board, for the school district. And, you know, but I think it's for a very different reason. So I think that's got a lot of experience, and I will tell you and echo what she said, the people show up when they need more information, when they need to make some changes to the articles, because you can change the articles a little bit within the legal guidelines.
Is there a danger that a very few people can change things if not enough people show up?
Yes, but I'm an expert, and I know many other people are in the school district. We used to count. And so you knew when we had a faction of people who would come and count us. And then you would send a note like, hey, come up from basketball. They're here, they're counting us. So there are mechanisms, but you have to be alive and be awake. There's always a danger. We could turn out people to town meeting and do the same thing, right? People always have to be alive to be awake.
Right, and we, at the school district, we obviously advocate for our budget, so we invite certain groups of people. So we know we have the majority.
Further, Dan?
Yeah, Kylie. My feeling is anytime more people can vote is what you ought to be doing. I mean, I've heard people come back and say, well, people aren't informed enough if they don't come to town meeting. Well, if they're informed enough to vote for select board, I think they're informed enough to vote on articles that are on the warrant.
Thank you, Dan. Any other comments? Seeing no other comments, entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, everybody, for participating in the public hearing. We will move on to the Hampshire Department of Transportation information session regarding the Shaker Boulevard Bridge replacement.
I'm going to introduce this as John By. He's the principal engineer on the project, replacing the Shaker Boulevard Bridge over the Knox River. It was the one that was destroyed in Hurricane Irene and replaced with a Bailey Bridge or a Rector set type bridge that was designed to be temporary. And we've got some federal funding and some state funding, and so we're proceeding on this project.
And,
John's been working hard on putting everything together. And tonight we're talking about what some of the alternatives are.
yeah, so the purpose tonight is just to inform everybody about the alternatives evaluated for the bridge replacement and then sort of discuss the proposed actions, but there's no action that's come out of tonight's session itself. So please, thank you for coming, appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for having me. Okay, so Jim said this is our second meeting. We have to have 2 meetings per NHDOT criteria. The first one was the local concerns meeting where we got input. And now we've gone away and done some engineering, done some cost estimating, and now we're going to present to you the options we looked at and the preferred options that we have are recommending. So
Sure.
All right, so the agenda. We'll talk about the purpose of the meeting, existing conditions, purpose of the project, talk a little bit about the project development process. We kind of talked about that before. We're going to look at some of the spans that we evaluated, and then some of the bridge types, costs, how we're going to maintain traffic during construction. I get to the schedule, and then questions and input from stakeholders as part of the DOT process. Sometimes the select board meetings, I don't know what it's like here, but we do want to encourage questions and comments from the public. Okay, so like I kind of said before, we're going to talk about the bridge alternates we looked at. we're gonna propose a preferred alternative, which we'll get comments on from everybody. Describe minutes of traffic, schedule, and answer questions anybody has. Project location, just for discussion's sake, I'm gonna call this the south end of Lake Muskoma is Shaker Boulevard. Little bridge here, it's about 250-ish feet from the lake shore. Yeah, as Jim said, it's a temporary bridge now, temporary as in was constructed in 2011, still there. It's a Bailey Bridge. It was just, the pre-existing bridge was only a 15-foot span bridge, and this is probably about a 70-foot span bridge now. You can kind of see the channel, here is still only about 15 feet wide, about the span of the original bridge that was there before. There's the metal deck of the existing bridge. Couple more photos. Here's your, I don't know if it's still there, but I think it's still there, the big beaver dam, the upstream end of it. Okay, so the purpose of the project, the idea is the complete replacement of this temporary truss bridge. We want to, provide a approved structure that's going to last for a lot longer than this one will, ideally around 80 years. Improve the roadway width, improve the channel opening, and improve the hydraulics under the bridge. So the project development process. Right now, we are in the engineering study phase, and we're in the second of those two public meetings. We show up there. We're having ongoing environmental and cultural coordination. We've actually been asked to maybe do a small historic study to see if the area around the bridge, some of the houses would be considered a historic district. So we're going to be starting to do that. We have talked to NHDES, and I'll get into that in a second. Then we'll move on to, once the engineering study is approved, you all approve it, the town is happy with it, it goes to NHDOT for their approval. Once they're happy with it, then we move on to preliminary plans. We'll do an environmental document. Then we'll move on to final plans when everything's approved from that, which includes environmental permitting, right-of-way easements, utility coordination. There's some utility poles that most likely will need to be relocated on the site. And then once all that's done, we advertise for construction. I'll get into the schedule of all that soon. Okay, so the opening list we need to consider. So we need to figure out what span length we want. It's kind of the first thing we needed to do. We need to follow with something called the NHDES stream crossing rules. Those rules basically to hold the natural channel width. Like right now, you can see the original bridge constricted that channel. So they prefer it that you keep the natural channel width as it goes through. It's better for aquatic organism passage. It's better for hydraulics. It doesn't jam things up as much. So it's not a terrible idea. So we kind of determined a bank full width. I'll kind of show you in a sec how we did that. Then we met with NHDOT and NHDES to discuss what we came up with. So here's a plan. Hopefully you can see it. And you can kind of see the width of the river. It varies quite a bit. Down here, it's really wide. Really next it gets wider up here, so it kind of varies quite a bit. So trying to figure out what the natural or the average stream width was kind of difficult, but we gave it a shot. What we came up with is a 50-foot bank full width. Now we met with NHDES and NHDOT, like I said, and they actually thought that maybe this was too much, and maybe we looked at something smaller. To be honest, I was a little surprised by this. Someone suggested we look at a 33-foot, basically what we call bank full width. It's basically just the bank-to-bank distance of the stream. And that's what the existing is right now. It's 33 feet, and it's only about 15 feet wide, like I said, at the channel base. We looked at that 50-foot bank full width, and then someone said, well, why don't we split the difference and see what that is? So we looked at three span alternatives, basically 33-foot bank full width, 40 and 50. Now what you're going to do is you take that bank full width and you set your abutments 20% longer than that. So they just kind of want you to get outside, have your abutments outside of the channel width, just so everything can flow smoothly through. So that's why we have a 40, 40 and 60. So this hopefully kind of sheds a little light on how that works. You kind of see, this is the original top of bank here. original top of bank here, what we've got there now, that's about 33 feet. Down here, the channel's about 15 feet. So this shows the 40-foot bank for width option, that option in the middle that we looked at. So it'll increase the channel at the bottom from 15 to 25 feet. And like I said, bank to bank to bank is about 40 feet, and the bridge opening is about 48 feet. So hopefully this kind of illustrates what it's kind of a lot. If there's any questions as we go, please feel free to let me know. So we ran a hydraulic analysis of these, and this bridge needs to meet NHDOT's hydraulic rules and also NHDES's. NHDOT wants what's called the 50-year storm plus 1 foot of freeboard. And DES likes you to accommodate the 100-year storm. There's no real strong definition of what that is. So the 2% is the 50-year, the 1% is the 100-year. And you can kind of see for each different opening size, the water, this is the water surface elevation, goes up about a foot. It's about a foot difference for each one. So the shorter one, the 40-foot, has the highest water surface elevation, also has the highest velocities. So as you make that channel bigger, your water surface for those storms drops and the velocities drop. That makes sense? Okay. So what we selected, when I say selected, I mean what we're recommending as engineers, and we've talked to Jim about, we've actually talked to NHDOT about, and they have we've all agreed that that option in the middle, the one I just showed you, is probably the best one to go with, because it does make improvements over what you have now. You know, increases the channel size, the hydraulics are better, and it's kind of that middle range cost. It's not the cheapest one, it's not the most expensive one either. So that's what we're recommending here. So it's still 48 feet, ends up being a 53-foot span. It's still a pretty sizable bridge. Now the roadway, talk about the roadway a little bit. I know there's some back and forth on this, but we had been proposing a 24-foot wide bridge, and that's been talking with Jim, and it seems like for him, that's the best option. He prefers a 2-lane bridge going through there. And it'll just taper back to the existing, that allows 2-way traffic. There's still some room for pedestrians. And the other thing we did is in the profile, I'll show you in a sec, we kind of changed the profile a little bit. We reduced the slope at one end of it. So here's the plan, we colored up for you. The yellow is the road. We did not change the alignment of the road at all, so it's the same, but it is wider. Green are slope impacts, because we are widening. We're pushing some slopes out into the wetland area out here. So that's the green here. And you can kind of see the existing bridge and the proposed bridge in here. So we do have impacts. This is the right-of-way line, which kind of narrows up at this end. So we do have slope impacts outside the right of way. So we will need to talk to the abutters about these slope impacts. We'll most likely need easements for them. Here is sort of the roadway profile I talked about. So it's just kind of slicing down the middle of the roadway. And this dash line is the existing, because right now it's flat. The bridge is flat for about 70 feet and it quickly drops down. It looks like at this one end on the left-hand side, they just kind of built a new bridge over the existing road. So we're just flattening that out to make the sight distance a little better so you don't come up here and hit that. And also we want some kind of slope on the bridge. We need it to drain. So we put this slope on here. So not a drastic change. We didn't want to raise the bridge at all if we could avoid it, because that'll just increase those impacts that you saw before. All right, more exciting stuff. So we looked at several bridge superstructure types. Superstructure is basically, the bridge that spans from end to end, So these, we looked at precast concrete options. Precast concrete are pretty good. They last a long time. They're pretty durable, So we looked at this one. This is a solid voided deck slab. This is kind of new. I don't think one's been done in New Hampshire yet. This is a voided deck slab. Now this one's connected differently than the other one. This one's kind of losing favor because you tie these beams together with kind of these strands that run laterally. You tie the whole thing together. Unfortunately, those strands tend to rot out over time, and it's hard to tell that they've done that. So they can lead to some nasty surprises. They haven't. I saw one once and it collapsed into a river, but they were dismantling it just not very well. So this one here, the solid one's a little better because it has these these kind of concrete closure pores in between. It locks the whole thing together. The other one, this is another precast concrete beam. This is called a next beam. Please don't ask me why they're called that. But it's basically a T-beam. It's kind of a double T-beam. And this gets used a lot. Again, precast concrete, fairly durable. These are very heavy. These are the heaviest ones we've got. The problem with this site is it's very narrow. If you know the site well, it's narrow. There's not a lot of rooms, not a room to swing cranes around. One end of the bridge is going to be difficult to get any equipment down, so you're probably not going to want to do it. So they're going to need a very large crane. So the heavier the beams, the larger the crane, the harder it is, the more it costs. So, and then standard steel girder I-beams. That was the fourth and last one we looked at. You're all probably pretty familiar with these. It's got a cast in place concrete deck. This would be what's called metallized, which is like a spray-on galvanizing. We don't really like to paint them anymore because it's a maintenance issue. Every 20-something years, you got to go back and paint it, and it's expensive and kind of pain in the butt. So we go with this spray-on galvanizing type now.
The best coating for thick metal is rust itself.
The weathering steel, you mean?
No, like metal automatically goes back to its natural form.
Right.
And so New Hampshire and northern states tend to be afraid of rust, but it's actually not as terrible as people think it is.
So this is sort of our preferred option. Again, what we've recommended. We went with the steel superstructure. We also went what's called pile supported integral abutments. The soils, probably because of the lake, swimming so close to the lake, are pretty soft. So we need to put them on piles. And integral abutments kind of hard to describe, but it's a really nice bridge because it's cheaper than conventional abutments. I'll show you in a second. I think actually in the profile, I might be able to show you. So you kind of see here, you only have a single row of piles. What happens is you kind of connect the concrete abutment to the superstructure, and it kind of forms this frame. And so it can kind of bend and flex, and it gets rid of joints. Joints are the worst thing on bridges. They leak, cause all the rusting and all the issues. So this one's pretty nice. Seeing as we had to put on piles anyway, we went with this integral abutment. All the costs were fairly similar. They're all kind of in the ballpark within a few percentages of each other. So that kind of ruled that out. We like the steel because it was lighter and easier to construct. Also, there's more fabricators for steel. Some of these concrete options, there's, a few fabricators. For the next beam, there may be only one fabricator. So more competition, will just hopefully give you a better price for that. And also works out really well with these integral abutments. You can really lock the abutment together with the steel, and it makes the design pretty good. So that's what we're recommending. Just a pretty standard steel girder bridge. What do you feel? Any questions? All right.
I have a quick question. So are we looking at a single lane or a double lane?
2 lanes, 24-foot wide, 2 lanes bridge.
Why are we looking at 2 lanes?
Mainly, well, one reason is if you went with a single lane bridge, NHDOT may be hesitant to fund that. Don't like single lane bridges mainly because they don't like to have to come back in a few years when the town decides they really want a 2-lane bridge. A single lane bridge right now, you get a few pedestrians on there. It can be a little tricky for them, so we wanted to widen that. And I think they're also plowing. We can't help
Yep.
the 24-foot.
The really narrow ones are tricky to plow.
So that's why. So yes, the road is much narrower itself, but it just made it easier to go out to about 24 feet for those reasons.
All right, we got a couple comments or questions in the audience. And please say your names for the minute taker.
Shirley Green. What advantage is it, if you're widening the bridge, you're gonna widen the road to that neighborhood and to the environment?
We're not gonna widen, we're gonna taper in pretty quickly. Hopefully this is fairly easy to see. So you can see the 24-foot width here in the middle. And we taper back in pretty quickly. So it's not a dramatic change, particularly on this side. I mean, it's fairly wide on this side of Shaker Boulevard here too. So we taper in quickly. As far as impacts the environment go, most of those kind of down in here. So it does create a little more wetland impact by doing that, but not a tremendous amount.
I'm also, I'm not just speaking for myself, I'm chair of the Conservation Commission.
Yes,
And
I'm
we
sorry.
have the opportunity to, and that was of the main concern of everyone on the commission was widening. We thought it'd be much better to do one lane
Yeah.
and maybe have a pedestrian pathway on either side or one side. And, we really, lots of times bigger is not better.
Even with the pedestrian path, I think you said sidewalks on both sides and single lane bridge, by that time, you'd be 5 foot sidewalks or 10 feet plus a single lane bridge. You're gonna be, the total width would probably be pretty similar to that.
Right, but on a quiet, road that doesn't have much traffic, it wouldn't be,
I think the difference with the quiet road part.
Pardon me?
I think the difference with the quiet road
It
part.
is a quiet road.
So
It's not a quiet road.
we're gonna stay focused and please refer comments, you know.
We just created a double one increasing the speed on this road.
Yeah, we get there a lot, but it's not for a very long distance. You're gonna be pretty tightened up by the time you get there. And like I said, on this side, sort of on the west side, it doesn't look like the road's that much narrower there as it is now.
But the speed will pick up with, double lane, rather than slowing down for each other,
And it wouldn't be just stopping there, isn't it?
right?
How the speed would increase, we don't know, we can't see.
Name's David Tatham,
Ah, it's-
and I own the land here and here.
Yep.
And I think this is the west side, right?
yeah, that's heading towards 4A if you go.
So
down that way.
I don't really care what you do down here. It's a beaver dam right now. But what I do care here is what you're going to do. This land slopes very quickly. My driveway comes through here. There's a culvert in my driveway, and the ditch that drains that culvert is right here. And if you widen anything, you're gonna destroy my culvert and my ditch and all the water flow there. And it will be coming down into my yard, into my driveway, into my stuff.
Yeah.
Plus, just on this side of that ditch are several, flowering bushes that we planted over the years. My wife will be out there with a shotgun or something. So that's what I'm concerned about. This existing abutment is 25 feet wide. And, 25 feet from here to here on the abutment. I'm wondering why on this side you can't make use of the existing abutment. That will still allow you to have a 24-foot wide bridge. I don't care what you do over here. This stuff here is, like I said, it's a freaking swamp, and do whatever you want on my land over here, but don't mess up my house.
Yeah, we won't, and we can talk more about this, on the side, if you don't mind, but, can't really use the existing abutments because they would make the bridge a lot longer. They're like 70 feet wide. And a 70-foot wide bridge would be expensive. It'd be really deep. It would kind of mess up the
No,
hydraulic.
you can make it, you can make it as long as you need it, but I'm talking about the width of the abutment.
Right.
If you could use the existing abutment, that would save us a lot of money. And even if it's federal money, it's still our taxes. And who knows in the existing environment if that federal money is even gonna be here next year.
Yeah, they're considering us. We have another comment here.
Right, Craig said one. So, first, I take note that the last speaker identified the width of abutments, meaning width going across the road, as what? 25 feet?
25 feet, I went home and measured.
And your bridge is supposed to be how wide?
The roadway will be 24 feet wide. I think the whole bridge is 27 feet wide.
So you can make substantial use of that abutment.
Again, we don't know what that abutment was designed for. It's probably not on piles. If you use that abutment and span all the way over, you'll have a much longer bridge.
It was only built in 2011, you ought to have records available.
I don't know what we did then.
So where are the records, people? This is something that should be known. All right, moving on. I'm noticing this width is supposed to be 24 feet. And is that meant to include pedestrian walkways or a place for them?
Yeah.
Or is that just the travel lanes?
Just the travel lanes.
Okay, so at 24 feet wide, it's not gonna be a big problem to plow the snow off that sucker. We recognize that. But what about pedestrians? What is intended to be done about them? Because they do like to, cross that bridge and hang out on it.
Right now, we
So-
don't have sidewalks planned, but if the town is interested in putting sidewalks, then you can look at that.
Question is it going to be sidewalks within the 24-foot width? Or would it be a pedestrian walkway along the outside of the intended structure?
Well, for both sides of the road slopes way down.
Yes, I know that. See,
Again, the wider you make it, the more wetland backs you'll have, the more cost you'll have.
that's right.
The way you wanna
I'm
go.
not talking about widening the bridge, I'm asking about pedestrian walkway.
Separate pedestrian bridge.
No,
Nope, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that you can, hang a pedestrian walkway on the side of a bridge. This is often done. In fact, I saw a picture today of a Bailey Bridge of all things that did indeed have, a 4-foot wide pedestrian walkway, railings on both sides. If you wanted to put up with the present span and it's only 1 lane wide, you could very easily and cheaply add such a thing. Just say, but the pedestrians do need to be separated from the traffic for safety.
Eric,
Yes.
I'd like to talk, so the bridge on Boys Camp Road.
Mhm.
That was replaced a couple of years ago.
Longer than that.
And there are no pedestrian walkways on that.
Mhm.
You just don't go across it if there's a car on it.
Yeah.
And to me, it's about the same length. So I don't see that they would be necessary on Shaker Boulevard. Is it still a single lane?
And for the minute taker, Deb Ford,
Oh, yeah, Deb Ford made the last.
just because we're recording it for the minute taker.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, it is a single lane, eventually.
That's a good question.
Go ahead, Kate.
So I am the select board representative to conservation, so I've heard their concerns and I certainly share them. I also am a longtime family member of on the other end of Shaker Boulevard. So I've used this a lot and it really does slow traffic. And I can tell you our experience over the years, anytime you make something wider, people go faster, right? That's just the nature of, you make 120 wider, it looks like the interstate, people go faster. So, I mean, it's anecdotal, but that's the expectation. Would we be allowed to line two sidewalks that are flat? So line it as a single lane bridge with the full width. Right, so that you have your pedestrian walkway, there's no separation, but they'd still be able to plow through. And so you'd have that natural narrowing, which would visually slow people, because this is a very busy neighborhood in terms of people walking, they walk their dogs, they have children, the kids do stand on the bridge. And I know that the goal is not to run people over, but that's for us. Visitors don't always care. Especially some of the, I will say, collegiate visitors who are going to the club out there. They go very, very fast from both ends. And so I think it's a real concern for people. I don't think everything gets reported every time there's an incident on the bridge, but I've been on the other side of the bridge many times, seen a pedestrian, seen kind of and it doesn't, if you don't get hit, you don't call the police in to report it, right? So, but there's a lot of traffic that's kind of interesting there. Do we have that opportunity? Are we allowed to line it as a single lane bridge?
We can ask DOT if they would pay for that. We've had trouble in the past getting to pay for single lane bridges. We could ask,
But it would be a full width, just lined as a single lane.
correct.
Yeah, and so that they would still
I
know.
mean, in the future, if you wanted a 2 lane, they might say, no, but take the sidewalks off the pre.
Right, I mean, then that would be an opportunity. Then you wouldn't be having the risk exposure of, hey, we want a new bridge. But I'll be honest, our zoning constricts that neighborhood from being developed much more. Without I mean, they already, every time they want to do something, have to get a variance. Because they don't mean current vote zoning expectations. So I don't think we're expecting it to be developed more from the density standpoint.
You have one more comment?
Yes. I had no idea that there was that much of a problem with, people driving on that bridge and driving that fast. And I am not in favor of making life any more difficult for the people driving the snowplows. Don't get me wrong here. But for the snowless seasons of the year, when you do have more pedestrians out there, having a one-lane bridge like the one we have now is going to slow them down. And putting a pedestrian walkway along one side, preferably the downstream side for better fishing, would separate the people on foot from the people driving cars. And it strikes me that that aspect of public safety is one that needs to be emphasized for this particular construction. We just don't need to set up a situation where we have like two pedestrian walkways right next to the cars. And what happens when you have leaves on the bridge and there's a little snow and there's some visitor who's deciding they absolutely must make their meeting in Chelsea or Boston or something. And the next thing you know, they've gone and plowed through some people they didn't quite see because they were thinking they really should belong in Daytona. Huh? Is that anything we want to encourage? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Have another one in the back?
David Benton, just a simple thought also is the fact that do we have any restrictions on a narrower bridge with, fire trucks or, heavy equipment that needs to come through? I agree with keeping the traffic down and speed down because I have lived there since I was born, essentially, or gone to our camp there. And I've fished off that bridge many times, previous bridges, so forth, and, the smell used to be fantastic there, but anyways. But if we make a bridge that's similar size, we're gonna have a little bit of difficulty getting heavy equipment across, and I don't know what kind of restrictions there could be, you know, in the future for heavy fire trucks or other equipment. So I agree that it's something to keep the traffic speed down, but also, you know, expansion for future as well as, you know, build a bridge that's gonna last us a lifetime.
Mhm.
You're gonna build it, you build it right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Always
All
on.
right, looking online, we have a hand up. All I see is CC.
Charlie Clark.
Oh, it's Charlie Clark. Okay.
Yeah.
Charlie, can you please unmute yourself and make your comment? Charlie, are you able to unmute yourself?
There you go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, the people that are online with their video on, it's taking up screen space. It's making it hard to see. It'd be nice if they could shut off their video.
Thank you. If folks online didn't hear, if you leave your video on, then that displays as part of the display for folks. And if you turn your video off, then it doesn't cause clutter.
Folks can individually at home go in the app, can go to view and then pick focus on content,
Mhm.
and that will help them individually.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you have a
Thank-
comment for the engineer, Charlie?
What was that?
You have a comment or suggestion for the engineer?
No, I'm in total agreement with the engineer, and I don't think we should, I rely on his knowledge, coming from an engineering background. People study this for years and then, decisions are made by, people who don't have the background. So whatever this will meet the state requirement, I'm in favor of that. And I'm not worrying about the one or two people that walk across the bridge because they made it so far with the Bailey Bridge we've had, and I don't think we've had an accident yet.
Okay, thank you, Charlie.
Yes.
I see a hand up online.
Madeline Johnson.
Madeline Johnson, please unmute yourself and make a comment. Are you able to unmute yourself, Madeline?
Yeah.
There we go. We can hear you.
Okay, great. Hi. As many of you know, I'm one of the abutters, so this is going to directly affect, part of this is going to be on my property. and affects the flow of the water that borders my property. I had a question about, I just was curious, why, when you presented this to, I can't remember who said it was the DOT or who, they suggested having a narrower span, that cutting it down to 30. What was their reasoning?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the wider we increase the opening, the more impacts you'll have up and down the channel to tie into the existing there. I don't know if that makes sense. So they were a little wary that they just didn't want to keep cutting away at the sides. Like if I move the abutment a little further back to the right, I cut way down to here, more so than I am with a shorter span. So they just didn't really like the excavation of the channel. And I was surprised about it.
And so what was your reason for wanting it larger? That was their opinion. What's yours?
Just balance those out. I mean, either way, doesn't matter. I don't say it doesn't matter that much to me. As long as it works hydraulically, it's fine. And that's what they did. I think a little larger may help your beaver dam problem as well. So it was sort of balancing the two is ended up what we did.
Sorry, hold on a second. Some scammers calling me. Sorry. Hold on a second. Have I lost you?
No, we're here.
Oh, okay, sorry. But now I can't find you on my screen anymore.
You can keep talking.
Well, I'll just keep talking. So I wanted to express my support for the steel construction. That is, better for the environment. That whatever concrete, cement is not great for the environment, as we know. So I'm happy to give my support to that. And I wanted to address the so-called beaver problem. No matter how wide that is, I don't know if anybody's been following recently in Czechoslovakia or Slovakia, there was a case of a town that was not getting organized to deal with a hydraulic problem. And they brought in some beavers, and the beavers actually took care of it faster and cheaper than the town engineers did. But my point being that no matter what we do, the beavers will be there. They were there before, and they will be there afterwards. And I'm not sure that they're particularly deterred by the width of an opening. So again, I would like to express my strong opinion that when you're building the bridge, that you place some sort of pipe or sluice underwater that will allow water to go through, so that even if the beavers do build the bridge, the water is going through, they're not hearing the running, build the dam, they're not hearing the running noise, and they're going to be perhaps a little bit less active. It just seems like such a waste of everybody's time to go there and then have to tear it apart, and then they build it back up again. It's sort of an endless process. It seems like if you could solve the problem of making sure that the water always goes through, I'm sure that my neighbor who suffers the most, the Tathams who suffer the most from this, would be really happy. So that's what I would just like to hear. We talked about this at a previous meeting. Perhaps you were going to discuss the issue in detail again this time, and you haven't gotten to it. But so far, I haven't heard anything more about this issue, which a lot of people are very concerned about.
Yes, we looked at that last time. We discussed it with I think it was U.S. Fish and Wildlife. You're the one who sent me the link to them.
Yes.
Yes. So I talked to that person, and he said those things you're talking about, the pipes, so on, those are really for culverts. And this isn't going to be a culvert. It needs to be big enough to be a bridge. So those things that they use that he was talking about are really for culverts. He told me they wouldn't work for a bridge.
Okay. So the person that I suggested that you talk to was the USDA and was actually a woman. So it sounds as if you did not talk to the person that I recommended. I'm not talking about something that's for culverts. I'm talking about something that was suggested to me by this woman as a solution for bridges. I'm afraid I don't have her name right here, but I'd like to feel that you spoke to the person who I've already discussed this with.
Okay, well, if you want to send that person's name to me again, we can talk to them again.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not feeling very heard on this. I keep feeling as if I'm saying, could you please do A? And you come back to me and said, I talked to somebody about doing B and they said it doesn't work. I'd like to have somebody tell me, I talked to them about A and this is what they said. Then I'll feel a little bit better that the question is being addressed.
So he'll follow up on that, Madeline.
Thank you.
Is there any other, okay, we got some hands up in the other side, well, all the way in the back.
Mary Murray, I am across from Mr. Tatum to Madeline Johnson. I would like to add my support for a pedestrian bridge. A lot of kids, a lot of bicycles, a lot of dog walkers and year round. But that just because we haven't had an accident yet, doesn't mean we haven't just been incredibly lucky. If there's a lot of foot traffic there and you're gonna build new, I think it's really important to put something in there for pedestrians or bike riders or whatever, because that gets very, very sketchy at times on that bridge.
Thank you. Sharon?
In addition to supporting what the person behind me just said, I mean, I do think that the people who live near this area know best about how it's used. On the level of how wide the bridge is, I'm not an expert on this at all. My only thought that nobody's brought up is if you need to have it a certain width, whatever you choose, and everybody agrees to. And if you're concerned about cars going too fast, because I live on a road on Maple Street where they do go too fast. And that's not too wide either. My idea is whether speed bumps or some sort of traffic deterrent could be put in. Once somebody hits a speed bump once or twice, they remember and they slow down. And then last but not least, I'm thinking about, there's a discussion about, I think, in following this, I think there was a discussion about water. Was there a discussion about water flow under the bridge? Okay, so one thought, I don't know if this is a consideration and if you've included this, is as we get into climate change and we get into rain events and we get into flooding, you're not going to want a brand new bridge flooded out and the land around it flooded out. So just some consideration about that. Thank you.
And that was Sharon Buffet.
Sorry.
Dan Kylie?
Dan Kylie, I'm in favor of the state's project, and I'll tell you why. Because the last time we went in and said we don't like their project on what was the rail trail, gonna be their new bridge for the rail trail. We said, well, why don't we make it level and all of this, and what did we end up with? The same thing that's there. And it's a problem now, it was a problem then, and because we went in, the state was ready to build a bridge that was gonna take care of the problem. We said, no, we want to do it this way. Well, it ended up that nothing was done for it. So I think we'd be better off with a project that engineering's been done on. I mean, if you want to hang a pedestrian on the side of it, maybe you can do that. But other than that, I think they've taken the time to do this project and I'm going with the engineers.
Thank you, Dan.
That's a good question.
Yes, Kate?
So say we take it as is, and I'm not against that at all. It's just more, I'm trying to listen to the public and folks that have, spoken in other meetings. Say we take it as is, and in terms of what we learn, that we do have a pedestrian problem, is there any punishment in the future, since we're the ones lining the road, if we line it differently? Right, so say it goes in and it gets lined as 2 lanes, and when we plow it and we go to reline it 5 years from then, and we're like, hey, and we line it as a single lane bridge, is there any punishment? No, I'm really like, right? Cause we're in charge of, and
No,
getting
no,
the
I mean,
state
no,
to line a sidewalk is like impossible. They don't like to do that anyway, so they're not coming back to do the bridge
You guys can,
line.
you can yourselves can build a sidewalk on the bridge a few years later.
So once it's in place, we're in charge of the bridge's future.
The state is necessarily gonna say no to a sidewalk. If you want a sidewalk, you probably couldn't have a sidewalk. If you wanted to add a sidewalk in the future, it's your bridge, you know? They're not gonna pay for it, but, you could do that. And again, if there is enough public support and the town does want a sidewalk, we could do that. It'll be kind of a sidewalk to nowhere. Cause you're gonna be back to walking in the middle of the 19-foot wide road, but it could be considered, it'll be wider. You know, maybe now down 22 feet with a sidewalk, or whatever Jim or the fire department needs to get over there is probably the best thing. For that.
Does a sidewalk have to be raised?
It should be
It's not really not much of a sidewalk if it isn't raised.
Well, I understand that, but we talk about complete streets and bike riders and things like that.
So I think the answer to your question, he's not the person who makes that decision, is that it's our bridge once the project is complete and we can do with that bridge as the town sees fit.
But again,
Right.
you could ask for one now. I
Right.
don't know if there's enough concern, enough pedestrian activity, the state may say, fine, yeah, have a sidewalk now. Bike lanes, if you stuck with a 24-foot wide, you could stripe 2 4-foot shoulders, which is pretty good for bikes. Just do that if you like.
Right, but that's kind of where I'm going as a stripe.
Bike lanes are just shoulders, they're just shoulders. The state tends to like 5-foot shoulders. for bike lanes. We do that a lot. 4 is probably fine, because you don't want to keep, I'm saying,
So we'd have enough.
increasing the bridge width. Sorry,
We'd have enough room for a shoulder. I guess that's where I was going.
24, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sometimes back roads, you might not even, you might just do a stripe down the middle and not do shoulders. On this, if you want, we can do shoulders, yeah. Just paint and show stripes.
Easy to plow.
Yeah.
David, did you?
That partially clarified my thoughts is that if we call it a bike lane instead of a pedestrian, on either side of that with one driving lane in between 2 bike lanes, problem solved, right?
Shirley, did you have a comment?
I was just gonna ask, I know there's a significant size aquifer that runs along the river. Has that been taken into consideration in the planning?
Aquifer along the river?
Along the Knox River. You will find it in, we have a natural resource inventory. You can find it in there.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that, but we can look into it.
Any new comment? I see another,
Madeline Johnson again.
Madeline, would you like to make a second comment?
Yes, I finally remembered the other thing I wanted to say in my first round of comments. One is that probably I'm the person who probably is most aware of what goes over that bridge. I'm the one who was there the most and who is perhaps closest to it. My sense is I've noticed since I've had lived there or had the house for 20 years that the amount of pedestrian traffic has just gone up immensely in the past few years, particularly since COVID. People come and actually park their cars along the road to go and walk on that part of Shaker Boulevard. People walk over from the condos all the time. So I think that we want to make it as nice as possible for pedestrians, however that can be done. My feeling is I would like to keep it as narrow as the bridge can be, but also I've sort of lost track of the various numbers of feet being thrown out there. But I feel as if I would like it to be as narrow as it can be to accommodate pedestrians and emergency vehicles. With the way the zoning laws are in town, there's not going to be a population increase around the lake. We really can't build much more. So there's no justification for saying, wow, there's going to be a whole lot more people. There aren't. There's certainly more pedestrians, but I don't think there will ever be substantially more autos going across that. So I'd like that to be taken into consideration. And so as I say, these are for me the priorities, that it's nice to walk on. We encourage people to walk on it, and we keep it narrow so that people go through there slowly. right now it acts as a speed bump. I walk across it all the time and I see cars, even though they could go through fairly quickly, it's, one lane after all. People just naturally slow down for it. So I'd like to keep it that way.
Thank you, Madeline. Another comment here?
I support exactly what she said. I see the same thing. I'm on the other side of the road from it. Exactly right. The pedestrian traffic has gone up over the years. And most cars slow down for the one lane bridge. Once in a while, one doesn't, but they're not gonna slow down. It was 5 lanes wide. So yeah, I totally agree with what she just said.
Thank you.
Name for the.
Oh, can you just say your name again? Yeah.
Thank you.
David Tate. All right, don't see any other hands up. Oh, we got one final comment.
Right, Craig Sanborn. So, given the volume of pedestrian traffic and the speed with which even some drivers think they get to drive there, the only reasonable and responsible solution for pedestrians is to hang a walkway for them separate from the auto traffic on the outside of the bridge, on the downstream side preferably. If otherwise, you have no physical barrier between the people and the cars. And if you're going to get large bits of equipment across there, I know you've done okay so far with what we have, being able to, I've never heard that you can't drive a fire truck across it right now. But if you're going to do anything about safety separation of pedestrians, put in at least one pedestrian sidewalk on the outside of the bridge and have done with it. There's no point in thinking that just striping the road for bike lanes or anything else is going to have a whole lot of effect on someone who is determined to go through fast.
Thank you for your comment.
Right. Thank you for
Can I
hearing.
ask a question? Jim,
Yes. you can ask Jim.
Jim, a sidewalk that would be hung from the side, is that treated legally like the other sidewalks where we would have to clear it?
That's a good question.
Because in the state law, like if we make a sidewalk to nowhere. In
I would
random
not
places in
look forward
town.
to going down and having to just do that. I mean, we have enough trouble with the Carl Patton Bridge, which has essentially the sidewalk to nowhere.
Right, because we're legally obligated to clear the Carl Patton
We do
Bridge.
clear that. And
Okay.
I don't know the answer to your question technically, but I can say that in Etna, the way they solve that is the sidewalk off the side is a grate. And so the snow just goes through it.
Okay, yep, Boston does that.
That's the next place I was going.
I don't see any other hands up, so I think we're going to move on. Thank you very much for coming. We
Okay.
got a lot of good feedback tonight. Thank you to everybody for
Totally railroaded.
providing
Sorry.
feedback.
Do you want me to keep going?
Yes.
Good.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry, I thought we had
We haven't even begun.
made it through
You said
the.
any questions and then I jumped in and I ruined
No,
it.
no. That's fine, that's
Sorry.
fine, no problem. Next thing I was gonna talk about was maintenance of traffic. Now, the idea, the most cost-effective way to build a bridge is simply to close it down and detour traffic around. We were initially going to do the construction in the winter, but we heard from the last public meeting that people prefer construction in the summer so that they don't have to drive down this snowy road in the winter. So now we're thinking about summer construction. That's what we heard. This is the kind of the detour we're thinking about now, just going down Shaker Hill Road and back up 4A. This was a detour we originally looked at, kind of sends cars through town, and this left turn here might be tough, so kind of leaning towards this one. Everybody local knows which way they'd want to go anyway, so probably not matter too much to anyone local, but anybody visiting, we'll probably leaning towards signing it in this direction. Yeah. Okay, schedule, engineering study, July 2025, we're on that now. Preliminary plans, December 2025. Hopefully final design, October 2026, advertised for construction, November 2026, and construction basically in 2027. All right, I like this one now too. So the project is funded. The construction is 100% federal funding. The design is 80% NHDOT funding and 20% town funding. So the entire construction is federal funds. DOT now has this programmed in their program for $1.23 million. I'm sorry to tell you that the construction costs, the total costs, including everything, engineering, construction engineering, right away, we have at $2.6 million. So this happens a lot. I don't know when HDOT did their estimate. It was probably several years ago. They didn't have the benefit of a hydraulic analysis or borings to determine it needs to be put in piles. And costs have skyrocketed over the last few years, as you know. We will be meeting with HDOT to discuss the price difference. My guess is they will find a way to make it work. So, but we'll be in touch on that one. And then, okay, yeah.
All right, yeah, apologies for being too fast. Are there any final questions or comments? Anybody? Thank you very much. We have one in the back, but one final comment.
And Jean has one online.
Okay.
Jacqueline, have you given any thought about an improvement to Full Road, Class 6 road for the detour? Or at least for a one-way traffic?
A lot of work. Fuller road. Fuller road back up to Charles.
Oh, that road is,
That's, oof,
it's a lost cause.
yeah, that
Why,
would be.
why do you say it's a lost cause?
It hasn't been, well, it is a class 6 road now, right? Yeah. I used to ride my horse up and down there. It was hard on the horse even.
I can't even ride a bike up there anymore.
No, you can't.
They
Walk
walk
it.
it, they ride bikes, they snowmobile, they four-wheel it,
Yeah, snowmobile could definitely do it, four-wheel, no problem.
four-wheeler goes through it.
I think it's definitely a $7 million, a seven-figure project.
But it is something he can take a look at as an
Yeah.
alternative. All right, and then, is that Jean Patton?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you very much for the comment about. Jean, can you unmute yourself and make your comment, please? Are you able to unmute yourself, Jean?
Okay, yep, I am now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. So, a couple of things, I'm gonna mention this again because I am quite really more than concerned about keep hearing the word federal funding. We know how hard the axe is being thrown these days. And my other question is, with these costs that have been developed, has there been any consideration about the impact of tariffs in this whole project?
That's very fair and not fun.
Well, it's United States Steel, so you know what's coming.
So I think the question is just around how the cost model was developed and
The
if there's any.
potential increases in costs due to tariffs have not been included in this. Steel, usually federal funding, there's a Buy America clause for steel anyway. So that shouldn't really be affected, I would hope. But no, we don't really know exactly what's going on.
Right.
So,
Shouldn't be, there's no guarantee that this steel is definitely going to be from the United States. I'm sure no one can put in on paper that it's going to be US steel.
Has to be.
It has to be.
Yes, this is one, Jim, where there's a Buy America clause that's in
And federal
most federal contracts. And it would be in this one, so we'd be
Okay.
required to purchase American steel regardless.
I
Okay,
would,
but I'm
I
still
would-
worried about the word federal funding.
Your
We all are.
comment and point around the risks of this going forward and the funding and the cost models are very, very valid.
Yep.
For sure.
Thanks.
Fortunately, the Bailey Bridge can last another 50 years with Esther.
Eric, I'd like to add just on the steel side, though, when you do have tariffs, it does increase the price of US steel typically as a commodity, so
Yep. No,
it's a very
the-
legitimate concern.
The question and concerns around risks of costs are very, very
Always
valid in many ways. And are certainly I'm sure the Hampshire DOT is updating their models as they go. Right. Any other, I don't see any other hands up at this point, so we will go on to the next item on the agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
Good presentation. Thank you for listening and got a lot of good feedback and comments from folks tonight. Okay, approval of minutes, February 4th. The regular meeting and then the joint budget.
I would make a motion to approve the February 4th regular meeting minutes and the February 5th joint budget committee and select board meeting.
I'll second that.
Like to abstain from the budget.
Are there, we can take them one at a time?
Yep, I'll make a motion to to approve the regular minutes of the February 4th meeting as printed.
Second that.
Are there comments or corrections on February 4th?
I thought they were
well done.
Yeah, as always. Excellent.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Make a motion to approve the joint meeting minutes of the select board and the budget committee and the public hearing associated with it from February 5th.
I'll second that.
Any corrections or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Alice abstains. Okay, on to board reports. Maybe we can be quick tonight, given our time. No updates? No? All right, I will go, the planning board had a good meeting. We had a conceptual hearing for a potential subdivision in Bog Road.
Where on Bog Road?
The old crate pit.
Oh, yeah.
Just conceptual at this point, with potentially 10 building lots,
Yeah.
is sort of the gist of the concept.
A very sandy development.
Yes, they will not have trouble with drainage.
Yeah.
John?
I have nothing to report. I think the budget committee has done its work and done it
Energy
well.
has nothing to report. We haven't met since, our last report.
Conservation Commission had a very lively meeting, and most of the discussion was centered around the Class 6 roads. I will give you the short version, and you can go watch the entire thing on YouTube. And that is that the Conservation Commission approved a motion to not pursue turning Class 6 roads into either class of trails, and is going to be looking at having a citizen group separately outside of the town who's going to volunteer their time, work on those roads, and we're going to facilitate letting them do that work and not paying tax dollars. So that's the short answer. And then I will say the other significant discussion was about this bridge that we just talked about. So you heard Shirley, the Conservation Commission as a whole, I think it's fair to say, well, they did not make a motion, express serious concerns about having more than a single lane bridge, is concerned about environmental impacts, and did submit some feedback to DOT.
And we sent a letter to them.
Yeah, so Shirley took care of that.
Good, thank you. Town managers report. Obviously, Ed is not here. Lisa, do you have? anything that has-
nothing.
Okay,
Have we had any luck in picking up someone to take some of the minutes to get them more timely posted? We've fallen a little bit behind on some of the committee meeting minutes postings.
I don't know about the smaller committees.
I don't think that the taking
I
of the
just
minutes,
wanted to ask if we'd had any luck in finding another person
so
to take meeting minutes as was suggested.
the
the last
taking of the issue.
We were looking for another person to take meeting minutes for the budget committee, and that is done.
The posting is a bigger issue. The public safety committee, what is that one called? I don't remember the formal name, but
Emergency Services Advisory.
has no minutes posted, and I think that's the
No,
response.
we haven't met in many, many months on purpose.
Emergency services.
Oh, emergency services, yes. hasn't posted.
has
We
not-
don't have a minute taker for each of the smaller committees. They do
No.
their own.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
And they're not.
So, and they're not getting you the minutes.
I'm not getting them now, so they're
Right.
not getting posted.
So they,
Okay.
I guess the
That,
bigger
that's what
concern
I,
is,
so they're not getting them to you in a timely fashion to allow you to do the posting. And under the new software program, they're not allowed to post themselves. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct.
Oh, they can post themselves.
Yes, some of them have the skills to do that.
Okay,
The
it's a
Energy
skill
Committee,
set
for
issue.
instance, can do that,
Okay.
because they have people on their board that have those skills, but some
Yes.
people just don't have anybody.
Eric, I think the bigger question is we appoint some of these committees. If they are not able to do their work within the confines of the law, we need to ask the question if we have the right people in place at this point. Because it's not okay for them not to have their minutes up.
That's a valid comment, Mike.
And I'm not trying to be mean, I know they're volunteers, but the expectation is you do the work, you do it in public, and the results are publicly published.
Yeah, that is,
Has the expectation been made clear to them?
Many times.
it has, and Ed is actively working on that particular committee. He's
I've talked to him.
talked to him a couple times about it.
Which committee is that?
The Emergency Services Advisory Committee.
Yeah.
She does need to.
But I don't want to single them out. A few of the other smaller
They're-
committees
No, they're,
have also
Yep.
fallen behind what is the requirement to post meetings within, working days of the
Yep.
meeting itself.
right, yep. And it's always worth bringing up because it is a very important.
It's part of the job,
Yep.
be on the committee.
And people do read them.
Oh, absolutely. All right, business, 79D. Rob, Dan. Come on up. So this is, as many people may know or may have forgotten, the town, I forget the total RSA, but it's an RSA 79. The town adopted 79E a few years ago, and this is a different RSA, or a different portion of that. Around.
Did you for fun? I thought you said that directly.
Ed
Sorry, mate.
forwarded a 70-page document to us.
It's correct.
Yeah, so I sent you all a pre-read, and then there's a slide presentation, but don't worry about it. We can go ahead without it. So basically, this is an opportunity to preserve our barns in town. And the way this all came about is, we purchased a piece of land on Lock Haven. It's 429 Lock Haven. And we wanted to put solar on the roof because it has a good southern exposure. And we called in a number of solar companies and they said, we need to see that the roof, the barn can support the weight. So we went out and got an engineer and the engineer said, no way, you have to do some significant work to the barn. So we began investigating people that could do that type of work. And while we were doing that, we Googled a lot of things about barn preservation, and we learned about the 79D that I'd never heard about before. So we continued to do some more research and we came up with some very interesting things, including the fact that you probably know some of this already, but in 2014, a inventory of Enfield's barns was conducted by a student at UVM who was pursuing a master's degree. And she found that there were 31 historic barns in Enfield at that time. They were in varying condition from excellent to poor. I don't know at this point how many still exist, but I suspect we have somewhat less than 31 historic barns at this time. So what I'd like to do tonight is try to talk about, if I'm sure the select board has talked about this in the past, but kind of rekindle the conversation. And come to agreement or not come to agreement, that 79D is something we want to talk about, and then map out next steps, responsibilities, and timelines. So the barn that I'm talking about, I'm not here talking specifically about my barn. The reason I even bring it up is I want full disclosure that I do have a barn. If this were to go forward, that there would be some minimal financial benefit to me. So I don't want anybody to learn about that secondhand. But 79D, if you didn't have the opportunity to review the packet, is basically a discretionary preservation easement. And it encourages the preservation of historic agricultural structures. More simply stated, if you have a qualifying barn, and there are some criteria to have a qualifying barn, and choose to reinforce it or renovate it completely, you will not be taxed at the incremental property value you have created. So essentially, if your property, including the land and an old barn, is worth $500,000, and you choose to spend $100,000 to renovate your barn so it remains standing for the next 50 years, you don't get the whole 100,000 in value, but maybe your property value goes from 500 then to 575. You would continue to be taxed at the $500,000 rather than the 575. So there's a couple of scenarios here. One is the town decides to move forward without any changes, and that's certainly an option. There would be no incremental incentive for people to renovate barns. If they want to renovate barns on their own, great, but there would be no tax incentive for them to do that. We may lose more barns as a result of that. And the town will receive potentially incremental tax dollars, because if 79D weren't passed, and that example I gave earlier, the value then became 575, and we could tax at 575, there's some incremental value there. But if the town were to adopt 79D, there would be some more incentive to renovate barns. The town may save a few extra barns, but the town's tax basis is unchanged. It's not like we're going to lose money if we were to adopt 79D. We don't lose money by doing this. You just forego the potential of incremental tax value. So right now, to me, this appears to be very complementary to other things that the town has done, including the TIF district. 79E, I know, is currently being discussed a bit around community revitalization. And then NHPSA 7281, which is new construction property tax exemptions in the village or downtown, might be something that we could take advantage of as well.
We already have that.
We already have that? Okay, great. So what I came here to do was to throw out this idea and ask the select board to consider it. Again, I would assume that at some point you have talked about it in the past. This RSA 79D was established in 2002. In 2023, this was in your packet, 97 New Hampshire cities and towns have taken advantage of it and provide this incentive to 610 structures. And this includes the towns of Canaan, Hanover, Lebanon, Lyme, and Plainfield, just to name a few that surround us. So I have run this by the Heritage Committee, and I don't know if Meredith Smith is on the line, but I would say, and Shirley is here, I know, that committee was very favorably inclined to look into this further, as well as I have talked to Norm Bernacki about it. And I talked to Norm about it for a couple of different reasons. One is his job as our assessor, and he assesses many other towns, so he has seen this implemented, as well as Norm lives in New London. And Norm was instrumental in putting 79D into New London, and Norm might actually be online. So I would respectfully ask you to give it some consideration. If you say, yes, this is something that we are favorably inclined to do, I think the next steps would be to map out responsibilities, who would be responsible for doing what, what's the timeline to do that, and eventually, when a proposal was to come before you, what is it that you want to see? And what, if you look at the packet again that I sent out, I gave you Plainfield and London. That shows pretty clearly the way they approach this. So many thanks to Rob. He's been very helpful here. Steve Buckley I met with from New Hampshire Municipal Association. Norm I mentioned. Andrew Cushing from Mascoma Valley Preservation was great talking about this. And Beverly Thompson actually sent me a piece of the inventory that was done in 2014, including our barn. She gave us some great information. That was built in 1820, and we plan, whether this goes forward or not, we're going to be doing the work on it. So I guess I lost any leverage I might have right there. So, but that's it. I'll
Thank you for bringing it forward. I guess I'll start with it. So for process, I believe all these RSAs have to be adopted by town meeting.
Actually, Eric, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, 79, you go to town meeting.
So, Rob did talk to, folks, in December, Rob talked to Steve Buckley at the New Hampshire Municipal Association. And according to Steve Buckley, a warrant article in town vote is not needed.
You guys can make a call on
Yeah,
that.
this is a public hearing.
Oh, okay. Well, I would express the opinion that I think we should put something like this to town meeting, would be my personal opinion. But it's good to know the technicalities of it.
Can, Eric, respectfully, can I ask why you think that would be a good idea?
Because when we're making changes to how we tax people, that does have an impact on everybody. And, I think it's fair to put tax changes to a vote.
Okay.
But it is good, it is important to understand that it's not necessary.
Okay.
So, I didn't realize that. Go ahead, Kate.
So I have a barn, but it is not with us old, but I have an interest in barns and I'm a farmer, so I'll disclose that. And I'm very interested in the inventory on the barns, but I think I'd also like to see this go back to Heritage for them to make a full set of recommendations with more information. I think us doing this work, and I'm in favor of it going to town meeting, but I'd like to see it really fleshed out. So some goals, potential tax exposure, non-monetary value. So things like getting a full listing of the address, the structure, the age divided into brackets, because it's divided into brackets by law. The value, the historic value, right? Like if it was a Shaker barn versus a founding fathers barn or something like that. And the agricultural value, also the sight line, the current taxes, and then what the allowable uses might or might not be. Because if somebody renovates a $100,000 junky barn into $1 million barn for their, billionaire car collection, people in town may not feel the same way about that. So I think having that kind of data. The other thing I'd like to happen is to have Heritage look at 79F. And 79F is the specific agricultural exemptions on barns, right? Because, are we doing this for somebody's collection of things, or are we doing it to preserve rural character? Ostensibly, barns are for agricultural and animal uses.
Go ahead, Rob.
I will just to respond a little bit to Kate. I was on the select board in Plainfield when we implemented this. And we did come up with a scoring system for sort of calculating the amount of tax discount that we would apply to the barns. And things that were put in there to sort of safeguard from what you're saying, somebody turning it into a party barn or some kind of a, classic car collection or something. If there was some score system that would actually say, is it going to be continually used as a agricultural structure? There was things about whether it was visible from the road and the age, whether there was a preservation plan put forward, those kind of things. So we tried to sort of accommodate some of those concerns in our implementation, which I think we could do here as well, sort of prevent. I mean, obviously, I don't want to see a barn that sort of gets a tax discount for, somebody that's going to use it for something that doesn't really fit as a barn, really. I mean, but I applaud Dan for all the work he's done, and I think it's good policy. I mean, we can certainly work.
I think it's worked out well for Plainfield.
Yeah, I mean, we're not talking huge amounts. What would we say? Plainfield's 4?
And
It's in your packet, I think.
4 or
it was
5 barns
yeah,
in Plainfield
yeah,
that we're talking
yeah.
about, and it's not humongous money for sure.
Yeah, so given that we have a new master plan, it does have a certain focus on sort of, maintaining some of that. I think it's well worth doing the due diligence to bring forward a plan. I
Yeah.
think that's very well worthwhile.
If I could ask you a question, I'm not sure if you had a chance to review everything I
I
sent
did
out.
read everything,
You did.
and I'm also familiar with it because I have a long-standing interest in preservation.
Was that directionally what you're thinking, where it had a scoring system and
Go through
everything?
Heritage, because they are our committee that we appoint that does these kind of works in town. I don't see us as a group doing the development piece, but maybe you guys want to.
No, I think having the Heritage Committee take the lead on sort of putting together a plan is a good idea, with the end goal being a warrant article for next year.
And have them come to us, give a presentation. I'm not saying we would be totally hands up. Obviously, they're our committee, but I think we need to empower committees to do work that's within their purview.
There are others.
I don't know, Alice, you're on I mean, is that unfair?
No, I think it would be great, and I think that they do have they're like uniquely positioned for exactly that, right? I would love to see like a draft one from them of one of these matrices.
just to understand, you know, what matters to Enfield from their perspective.
And maybe they come back to us and they feel very strongly about not going to town meeting and they make that case.
You're right, yeah, no, I mean.
You know, I think that will all-
I've said my personal opinion, but that's a personal opinion and.
Certainly been on Heritage radar.
Yeah.
That for a time, and I'm sure
Yeah.
that the, a survey came through.
Yeah.
That was.
But, and I'll say, I mean, I spent time as a timber framer and I think I worked on at least 3 of the ones in Plainfield and 2 in New London, so.
All right, good.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
That's good stuff.
All right, Citizens Academy presentation. So Rob's been working on this idea for a couple years now, and now has it, to fruition, I think.
Yeah, you guys should have gotten a memo and stuff from us on it. I'll just explain that this is not an idea that we came up with. It's actually an idea I think that other communities in the state and around the region have implemented. The one that I'm more intimately aware of is in the city of Lebanon. They've done this program now since I think about 2016 or so. It really is intended to be a program that we can, get people more involved in their community and help them learn about what their community government does or their town government does. Sort of developing that sort of relationship. I think this would be a program where we have basically these classes, and you can see some sampling there. Obviously, it can be tweaked with your input and others. We've talked about it at the executive committee level a bunch of times. I've talked about it with previous town managers as well. I think it's sort of intended to be kind of like a micro version of Leadership Upper Valley or Leadership New Hampshire, which are great programs to sort of develop a cohort of people that are more actively engaged in their town and their town's government. Building sort of bridges to people that could possibly maybe end up as board members of various committees and boards that we have. I like to think of it as kind of a farm system for, the big leagues. And so we could help bring people up to speed on all of the different things that happen here. I think, there's been generally good support from the people that are on this list as possible, people performing the trainings or doing the classes. I would obviously help sort of facilitate it if you guys are so inclined to support this and.
I think the list didn't get printed out.
I think we're all missing it.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Received it. I have a memo.
Okay.
We got the cover memo,
Oh, okay. Well, I'll pass
but we
it
didn't
around.
get the list.
I think it's been printed.
I'll pass it around. You guys can take a look at it. Essentially, it's like 8 classes, once a month, starting with sort of a town manager welcome introduction to the town office and what happens at the town office. When you get through all of those various functions of what's happening down at Whitney Hall. There would be a Public Works Day, there'd be a Public Safety Day. Each month successively, we'd go over another topic. I would do a Land Use Day to kind of introduce people to what we're doing here. I think a lot of people may be confused as to what planning and zoning actually entails. Unless you've sat in front of a planning board or come to one of our meetings, it's probably Latin to a lot of people. So there's a little sampling of the various classes that we would offer. We're hoping to get, maybe 10 people sign up at the minimum and at the maximum 20, 25 if we're successful. Obviously, we put it out and advertise it as much as we can, try to get some people interested. I do know from personal knowledge and experience that the Lebanon program has been very successful. They've done several cohorts now that have been very successful at getting people knowledge. And again, it's just sort of building that bridge. I think you guys can get on board with that to sort of introduce our leadership and our people that we have in our town that are all very friendly and nice to help get people up to speed as to what their town does and sort of run them through it. So I don't want to take too much more of your time. I know you guys have had a busy schedule.
It's a great opportunity for outreach and educate people and other comments from the board.
I think it's a terrific thing.
I'll make sure this gets forwarded out to you guys.
It sounds like it's gonna land squarely on your desk.
Sure.
And it's a great responsibility for you to take on and willingness to foster some interest in.
Yeah.
Perhaps helping out with some of the committees and eventually, landing in this chair.
Yeah. That's the plan. So we're hopeful. We'll keep you guys in the loop and let you know what we come up with.
And I'm sure you can find a very easy way to get lots of people to come see all the big trucks here.
Absolutely. Ed has actually been like, maybe we could let people jump up in a truck and
Right.
drive it across the parking lot.
Oh,
Insurance will like.
They can have
I don't think so.
We'll let them take
No,
a
Not unless
selfie.
they flash,
We'll let them sit in.
yeah, not unless,
Selfies only.
not unless they flash a Class A on me.
No, unless there's other comments, I think it's a good opportunity and well worth.
we could pursue this, give it a try.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, definitely.
I think it's an excellent step forward and engaging people.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah. Good to see you.
And making use of one of the nice new meeting rooms in the hall.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, moving on, downtown parking. I think, Chief Holland's leading the way on our downtown parking. This was fascinating, actually.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
So I know it's been a long night, so I'll go through the slides or presentation, judiciously, but, try not to shortchange the subject. So a little while ago, town manager asked me to look into, town parking, just kind of gather the information. He said that the select board was interested in kind of looking at what we have and maybe what we need and stuff like that. And I will say I didn't do all this work myself. Actually, Rob and Jim, we kind of, teamed up together. I stole a lot of the information from Rob. He had already started gathering it for me, so that was gracious. Thank you. So quite frankly, there's already about 200 known parking spots in the town of Enfield. You have a list there that kind of breaks it down. Some of those numbers have changed slightly due to some construction or other things in town, but that's roughly about the amount of parking spots already established within town. Move on to the next one, please. So there are several areas that are kind of, I guess we'd say, underdeveloped for parking that we already have in town. One being the Blacksmith Alley piece of property that, if you can see, I can't even see that it's highlighted, but it should be highlighted.
It is.
Okay, thank you.
It's yellow.
It's, yeah, that's right. All right. So that highlight, the town of Enfield actually owns that piece of property. It's, for the 25 plus years that I've been around, it's just kind of sits there. That's kind of a future opportunity to, work with DPW and make it so that it could be, more appealing to be parked for some parking down there. And you'll understand why is when we get, a little bit further down.
Which one?
Blacksmith Alley is the one, so you know where Kitchen 56 is? The road that goes down back behind the apartments and comes up by George's? That's Blacksmith Alley. Oh, no problem. All right, so here's for my perspective, or at least my job, the biggest problem that we have in Enfield right now is we have 3 separate parking ordinances in town. We have the town parking ordinance from 1988, the Skoma Beach parking ordinance from 1989, and the winter parking ban. It's written in under the snow removal policy of the town from 1998. And all 3 say something different. All right, and so if you look at the Skoma Beach parking lot, it says, the Skoma Beach ordinance, it says that the beach closes at dusk, but the parking lot closes at 9, but the boat lower one closes at 10, and then the other one says that they,
And it says you're supposed to have a permit, which nobody does.
yes, yep, yeah, it says that. And then the other one says that there's no overnight parking in town at all, period. And that the only, with the exception of being behind Whitney Hall with town permission only. And then it also has different times for the Shaker ball fields and so on. You get the point here. I think that first and foremost, we need to kind of bring them all under one umbrella, kind of decide as a town what we want for parking. Talking with Jim and Rob, I do believe it's time to establish a few areas of overnight parking. And I think that being, I like to believe that, I'm a reasonable person and I use my discretion in enforcing. And so, you know, if somebody parks, decides to go to Kitchen 56, maybe has a little more than that, then well, I'd rather have them give them a ride home and have that car there overnight than and not write them a ticket for a parking violation, which by the way is $5 based off the 1988 fine.
It's an appropriate.
And so I do believe with our, downtown being developed some, talking with Jim and kind of going over, what would be the least, intrusive onto, let's say, winter and stuff like that. And we came up with a few spots that we thought would be advantageous to the town, where it wouldn't impede winter, but we would allow overnight parking. I don't believe that we should just open the whole town for overnight parking, because I will say that, we do still every year run into a few occasions where somebody will pull a camper up to a town piece of property and try to set up camp.
But what about a resident deciding that they're too cramped in their parking and just using the town's overnight parking on a regular basis?
So we would, so part of our patrols, we pay attention to a lot of those cars and stuff like that, and I think that would still continue to be part of our monitoring. Now, Ed actually had that exact question. What if somebody had 3 cars in their house all of a sudden and they thought that, well, we'll just park there? And I think that we would do what we do now and just have a little more judicial notice of where vehicles are, and if they're the same, address that on a case by case.
I do think that there are apartments in town that are cramped for parking already.
There, without throwing anybody under the bus,
Right.
there are places that we routinely have conversations with vehicle drivers and say, this isn't apartment parking, this is public parking, and they say, oh, this is where our landlords told us to park, and we have to re-educate them. And that usually works. Sometimes it doesn't, and we have to write them a citation, but we usually get the point across eventually. And so,
$5 pretty cheap.
well, that's, yeah. Well, so. So as the slide says, yes, I think we need to allow overnight parking in specific designated areas, not overall. I think we need to, increase the fines to be something that has a little more teeth than $5 a night. And it is incremental. It's $5, $15, and then $100, I believe. And I think this would be, tonight's not the night for this. I think we'd obviously dive into this into a town ordinance right here, and so we have to have, but I think it should mirror the state law for, parking, state fines for parking prohibited.
Other than what you mentioned,
Mhm.
I'm still unclear as to why we need overnight parking.
So right now, town ordinance says, absolutely no overnight parking. So if, in a great example that I got, now obviously I can use my, reasoning, right? And say, no, but it's actually written in black and white that you're not allowed to park. So if you say the brewery opens up.
No, I understand that,
Yeah.
but why do we need it?
So,
Other than the one incident you mentioned about someone who indulged in the sample tray too much.
sure.
Another one we talked about, Roy, is at the community building where they have the advanced transit bus stop. And, we do have some staff members at DHMC that will park there. And if they're working the overnight shift, they're gonna get towed. So, that there might be 5 or 6 spaces we could use there. They could ride the bus in.
But they aren't actually towed under the current circumstances.
They would be, yes.
They should.
So if DPW is, typically we like to work with our community, right? So we'll use our resources to get hold of the person and say, hey, it can't happen. You can't park there anymore. But say it snows tonight and DPW calls us and they say, hey, these vehicles are in the way of our snow removal. It is in violation of the town ordinance, so we will remove them, if we can't get hold of the person.
But
And
you're not listing the community center at all in your proposed.
No,
suggestions of
and
overnight.
it was one that we had talked about. It was one that, when me and Ed had reviewed this, it was something he thought needed more discussion specifically there. So.
What about the main, so I know Main Street is shared with the state, but there's parallel parking on Main Street right now that's being used by landlords. We don't owe spots to landlords.
Correct.
So that could be like 2-hour public parking for the library, because we don't have a ton of parking in that section to go to town hall. I think, it's nice where we pay, but
So I agree with you, lower on Main Street, right? And we do, I don't want to say we deal with that every night, but we do deal with that on, when we see the same vehicle parking, on the street. That the 2 spots in front of the library are actually no parking spots anymore. They're
no,
gone.
not in front of the library, the apartment buildings further down where like there was the camper with the slide out for so long, right? Those are parallel, that could easily be, that's not on their property.
That's, so
State property.
that's not.
It's
to town.
distance from the center line. So to me, that's the kind of stuff that we need to holistically look at, though, is all of those are parking spaces. And
Where
then
did those people park?
I hate to be like this, but this is not our problem as a municipality.
Did we pick up 3 parallel spaces in front of Mr. Kelleher's new apartment house?
Yes.
I thought so.
Yep. And one of the proposals is to pick up more of them lower on Main Street towards the, opposite of the rail trail by the, Lakeside Park.
The piece of land I was actually looking at was lot 41, which is the part of the land directly opposite the Methodist church, which is actually owned by the town. It's a lot approximately 70-foot wide, 70-foot deep, would certainly accommodate 6 or 8 vehicles and could be overnight parking very easily.
Sure. Yep.
Slight development by the town, but not much.
Yeah, and that's on the short list that, like I said, me and Rob and Jim have talked about, that could be developed, at a later time with the town through, hopefully, economical ways of developing them. I will talk with Rob and look more into the Main Street part down there, because I think we're gonna have a difference of opinion on that, because when I dealt with the camper that was on the other side of the road, the state has the right of way from the center line to there, but they don't own the property.
Well, I'm saying, but
They own so if the owner of the building still actually owns the property, you
Okay.
can't put a permanent development there.
So we
I.e.,
could line it potentially, because we
can, but we don't own the property, so we can't make it public parking when it's their property. They can't put like a barrier there.
can we put a bike lane through there? I'm serious, like this is,
I don't know.
because it's a right of way. Usually right of ways are left open.
Theoretically, when you move to the new building, you'll regain the couple of spaces that are directly in front of the current police station. That can actually be extended by a little bit, if I understand it right, because the telephone company, unlike the building you exactly just described, does not actually own out to the street in front of their building.
I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you. I don't know where they own. We've always had a kind of working relationship with them.
Right,
We stay out of their way, they stay out of ours
I understand.
thing there. So they're definitely, amicable to work with,
Right.
and with parking and stuff like that. So, and there'll be parking out back that would be, typically is reserved for the cruisers and the men and women coming back, going back to work, that will open up that, quite frankly, every year during the fair is
Yeah.
turns into public parking too.
Oh, yeah.
So next to Community Lutheran Church's parking lot,
Mhm.
and I'm wondering when you said lot 41, did you mean the Community Lutheran lot and not the Methodist?
Excuse me, yes.
Okay, because that's our lot.
The one.
No, lot 41 is the public lot adjacent to the church lot.
I'm saying though, it's Community Lutheran on Main Street, not the Methodist.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My
on
apologies.
Route 4. Okay,
Yes.
because that one is another excellent spot.
It is.
I'm personally wondering, can we do some kind of, different towns have different, where you can have permit parking overnight and things like that. You might be able to be accommodating in some ways with some of these folks who don't have enough spaces and allow backup parking by some kind of overnight permit.
Yeah, well, and I'm gonna hit
That's a
that,
good
I'm gonna
spot.
hit that towards the end there. So one of the things, Ed asked me to look into was the pay to parking, right? And so, yeah, so there's 2 options that I've found, right? The pay to parking kiosks, which, these are the 2 most popular out there right now, which Hanover uses. Each one of those kiosks are $5,850. That's what I got from Hanover when I talked to their enforcement, and that's what they pay to replace each one that somebody runs into. Um, I know, right? That guy knew the number right off the top of his head.
That's bad.
And it's up to $20,000 for the initial install, just depending on how far you gotta run power and data and all that stuff. And then there's QR code parking. And they range, and those are actually typically a percentage. They range anywhere from 7% to 45% of the collected funds. Both options. So here's the kind of the caveat to that, and I'm not recommending pay to park, right? One of, the caveat to that is if we put it in, we have to enforce it. If you don't enforce it, then it's not worth putting it in. In order to enforce it, we'd have to add, at least a part-time position of parking enforcement, which is gonna, I think a better study would have to be done on what would be the potential of revenue versus the side effects of people not coming to downtown Main Street versus, because now they have to pay to park. I just don't, at this point, and I know this is really early into the, I don't think it's something that
Yeah.
Enfield need.
I think that'd
That's
be
a personal thing, but that's, I just wanted to throw that in there. And I just don't think we need to do it. What I think we need to do, I think it's the next one. There we go. QR code. So when Ed signed this to me, I obviously I worked with Rob and Jim, which were great, and I pulled up the maps and stuff, but I also went downtown, talked to a few people that were coming out of Kitchen 56, and I went over to, used to be Janet's, and then it was, Gasano's. Sorry, I had to go through the list of my, yeah. So,
For sale.
so, yeah, so before they closed, I went over and talked to them and stuff like that, and I talked to just a few other people around town. Well, I like to get out and talk to people. And the biggest thing that people in Enfield that aren't from Enfield don't know is where to park.
Right. Yep.
Right? If Main Street, if it's a busy night at Kitchen 56, which is great for them, love to see a local business doing good. But that little parking lot, the rail trail parking lot is full, and those 3 to 4 on the road are full. Some people don't go because they don't know where to park. And when I say, well, do you know about Depot Street? They have no idea. And so I spoke with somebody from Eva, and I wish I could remember her name, but she was great to talk to.
Was it Julie?
I even if you said it, I'm not gonna remember it, but we had a great conversation on the phone. I honestly, I spoke to a great lady at Eva, who we had a great conversation, and we both agreed that with QR code availability easily now, that could be one of the first campaigns that we could take up for parking in Enfield, right? We could, through cheap vinyl signs at first, or even permanent signs, create QR codes that would bring you to right away to like a website that has very easy choices, right? Are you going on the rail trail? Here are 3 great places to park, right? Depot Street, parking now, especially, come end of May, early June, when the ambulance moves over to public safety building, there's no worry about somebody walking in the ambulance, going in and out. Great place to park if you're gonna access the rail trail, right?
So we saw.
Lakeside Park. If we develop, the piece down on Main Street, right? Do you plan on eating in downtown Main Street? If you can't park here's places that are within very short walking distance. That can be very easily built through a QR code and then disseminated through the town and then changed easily and add information, a wealth of information for people that come into town and, either can look up ahead of time or they see the sign, have parking questions, hit the QR code. Okay.
We encourage like Kitchen 56 to put it on their online menu. You're looking at the menu before you go.
And the nice thing about QR codes is if you give it a static reference on your own webpage, then you can either point to other web pages or you can continue to list like the map, interactive, whatever. It's a one-shot deal with one QR code. It's very easy.
And Eva has already committed to working with us on this project and helping, whether helping spread some of the cost of the signs and developing it. And I think for Enfield, it's the first step.
That's a great
I
project.
think that's a good first step, no question about it. I think coordinating all of the parking ordinances together, that fits right with it.
Yep.
As a simultaneous step, if you will. And I think a group looking at all possibilities for further parking, whether it's the development of this lot I just suggested on Main Street to you. The other one I'd like to suggest is the development of a lot at the end of the rail trail on Union Street where, is opposite Shed Street. That's the old fire pond. That's a 90-foot wide piece of land. That would easily accommodate 8 to 10 cars in that one stretch, once it was developed. Which means that we no longer need Depot Street, which would free up the Depot Street to be dealt with by a further group that's gonna look at what do we do with Depot Street? But it takes the pressure off of, we've got to keep a piece of Depot Street for land. I personally happen to be opposed to having public parking on private dead-end roads, but, that's me. So I think there are good possibilities there, the first two being simultaneous, and then a further development of other parking locations throughout town.
I agree. I think the QR codes, could be the first project, and then, as maybe after we get through town meeting, I'll talk with the town manager some more about kicking off that process that is such a nice process to change town ordinances and stuff like that. And maybe combining them all to one and working with this group and maybe Eva and some other people that might be interested in what should the parking ordinances for the town look like.
I think the town needs be the primary driver because Eva has been talking about parking involved and I don't know how many years, 10, 20, and nothing has, I'm not trying to be mean, but nothing concrete has come of it. So it has to be driven by the town. They can absolutely help and disseminate. Funds are great, but I think we have to drive this home at this point.
There's also a hand raised on.
David, I think you have a comment.
Okay, I think there's some previous experience that is worthwhile knowing about. The rail trail, I believe with some of Eva's assistance, did try QR code signs at Mascoma Lakeside Park and at Depot Street in terms of trying to direct people to the parking that for people that may have been starting out from here or returning from here, but not necessarily needing to park in close to Main Street for a 30-mile ride that only began and ended here. It was not particularly successful, and I think it's worth looking at that experience, trying to figure out why it wasn't before we go in with both feet.
Thank you.
Someone online.
Yep, it's Bridget Liberty.
There's Julie.
Julie's trying to.
Yeah, so I see two,
Julie had her hand up. I mean, Bridget had her hand up first and then Julie.
so Bridget, go ahead. Can you unmute yourself and make your comment?
Sure can. Hi, everybody. And I'm sure Julie's gonna follow right behind me because we just sat in a meeting talking about this with Eva and I've sat in multiple parking meetings. There have been groups, all of that fun stuff. And as Kate said, Eva has been nice enough to say we can help, not we, I'm not part of Eva, but they can help with funding. And the discussion was exactly kind of what happened tonight. Talk with Roy, talk with Rob, talk with Ed. Where are the things? I would go one step further and say the QR codes are great. Looking ahead would be great, but some signage on the streets would also be great. Parking, if you're going to have parking overnight in a spot, it can say that, but if not, it says no overnight parking, or it says between this time and this time in these spots. And I think, again, talking about the map, we've talked about the Main Street rail trail parking. That really should be municipal business parking, because we have other options and other spots for that. So I mean, I think those of us who have sat in many of these meetings, it's been said, it's been done, and I'm kind of with Kate. It's time to just make the action. So, but it's a matter of putting the people in the room so you have all the information.
I think those are very good points, and I think signage is gonna be crucial no matter what we do.
I think it needs to be a campaign.
Yeah.
I agree.
Right? If we want to get the information out, you have to, you can create QR codes and you can put them out there in the world, but if there's not a campaign, a social media campaign, a town advertisement campaign, a new sign, stuff like that, then people don't know that they exist. And so I think it becomes a town project, like you said, that, but, you know, brings in all the right people that want to participate and make it a successful campaign.
And then, Julie Eckert, did I see your hand up?
You did. I did talk with Chief Holland and we are excited at EVA about assisting. However, let me make sure that I say that we are interested in learning more about what is needed. And it is not necessarily a commitment until we know we can look at things. I disagree with Kate's statement that we never did anything. I came onto this group with EVA originally because of parking. We struggled very hard and we did get signage up that came pointing out depot parking, parking at the library, and signage that is misplaced. That's saying rail trail parking in front of 56 Main. We are interested. We do want to help. We think signage is the clue. What Roy has talked about. We really think you can do the campaign and do the signage and make it clear. I'm going to add one more thing to that is my pet thing. And I think that lighting downtown to some of these parking spaces is difficult, and some of the signage perhaps could include lighting, but I'm not going to make those decisions. So EVA is interested in learning more and probably would like to help fund some of it. That's it. Thank you. We are back on this program and I'm parking yet again.
Lighting is a good point.
Want to talk about streetlights?
Not necessarily streetlights, sign lights.
Sign lights work fine.
Yeah.
Solar powered sign lights have been
You
developed.
know my weak points.
I'm sorry.
Sharon?
Thank you. A lot of the points were made. I think we have to really consider getting this for the town. I think as Kate has said, for the businesses in town, because I really think I think the brewery is probably gonna open in May. And that's gonna be big. And so anything we have for parking is gonna be inundated and people are gonna park if there's no signs, people are gonna park wherever. And then you don't know where they are, or you have to find them in the bar. That's not what you want to do. And so my second point about that is, I am not in favor of overnight parking, because I think let's get this parking squared away before we open a barn door and figure out where people can leave their cars overnight and who can leave their cars. I just think that presents another additional layer to this that, we don't have this figured out yet. And I'm not in favor of any additional town positions created to monitor parking. There again, that gets into taxes, that gets, let's keep it simple. Let's begin and let's take care of businesses during, who needs parking spaces.
I certainly agree. The brew pub is gonna put some pressure on the town.
Yeah.
On state permit parking in the driveway.
That's smart.
I'll make two comments that I've seen. One was, and you may want to consider this just in general, for the brewery in particular, but I definitely have been in restaurants where they had basically cards that people would write their phone number on and put it under their windshield so that the police would know that they had gotten a ride home. And they had the contact info right there. I don't imagine that the brewery would object to something like that, but it might be something to throw out. And then whenever I look for parking, I'm old fashioned. I pull up Google Maps and I search for parking and I go to the closest one. So if we just got ourselves onto Google Maps, that alone might.
And I think a lot of that is organizing ourselves.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to say it, but I'll say, when it comes to parking, we're not organized as a town.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's fair.
We don't even have the signage together
And
yet.
that's, so what I've heard today is one, the select board should seriously consider having a single parking ordinance instead of three. Signage needs to be developed and clear. And it sounds like EVA's got a willingness to support that aspect of it once it's been defined what needs to be done. And then, we need. Yeah, so signage and then communication.
Yeah, I think we leverage technology, you know, to advance the town.
But if we do have a couple spaces the town owns, we should, move forward with that. And-
They need to be, there needs to be signage
Yeah.
at those new spaces.
Yeah, and the space need to be defined
They need
clearly.
to be lined.
Yeah.
I would tell you right now, 41, which is adjacent to the Community Lutheran lot,
Yeah.
is plowed by Community Lutheran. So that's something else to consider is if you're gonna, you know, they might do it for you, by agreement, or the town might need to plow it. I don't think that's the end of the world. But I think, you know, there's just some little
Yeah.
considerations.
There's a lot of details.
I think the Shakoma Beach is a very separate issue that we probably need to talk about in a different light, because I get complaints from residents. I wanted to go to the beach in our town, and I know the cars I saw were from Lebanon, and I'm like, call them in if you want a spot. Because I'm not gonna get into it with people, but some kind of clear definition around expectations.
I think that's a whole issue that needs to be looked at. I had made the suggestion a year and a half ago that the two parking lots at the beach be switched. I believe the boats with trailers ought to be in the upper lot. The lower lot should be reserved for those who swim. That's a whole nother issue. I think it needs to be looked at by an entire group.
But the trailers have to make use of the lower lot.
To use it, and then in New London, for example, they have to go a block and a half away. So they could launch the boats, go a block and a half up go up the hill and leave the boat and the trailers up there. That's how New London works. There is no adjacent parking for the harbor of New London.
Certainly, changes of that nature will be considered as we're looking at consolidating.
As I say, that's a whole nother issue. I'm not questioning that be brought up anywhere near now, but a group should look at something like that.
I don't think is that our launch? There's something to do with DES on the launch, so it's not a simple one.
Actually, that's our launch.
No, I.
Jim left, Jim
believe
did talk.
water-
So I believe that the state developed the launch and then gave it to the town. But
Correct.
Jim left, so I can't.
Yeah.
You think the town owns that?
So the state still owns the launch, but I believe the town owns the parking lot.
Right.
Parking.
Definitely.
That's my understanding.
Plastics Road.
Yeah, we spent $90,000 fixing the lot, CIP money, so
Yeah,
Okay, so they,
obviously, we must be on the launch.
Yeah.
On the launch.
I'm just saying this thinking outside the box to be done.
no,
In a few
I mean, I
different
believe
areas.
we own a little more land there than what the parking lot currently still is, but
We
I
might.
mean, it's a pretty good drop down there. So,
I was concerned about people backing up trailers and stuff and having people with their kids sit on the beach walking through there.
So I'll say, you know, and I don't wanna go too deep into the weeds on this one. I agreed with Tracy, in the past, but then with the with the new trail that's gonna be going in, that we got the grant more, there's gonna be an enhanced crosswalk there. And so now I'm like, oh, we got an enhanced crosswalk with parents and kids being able to go across versus Main Street. So I could hear
But that
good arguments
drives-
on both sides.
That drives the parking for families with kids to the lower lot where they don't have to cross the enhanced crosswalk.
Sure, yeah.
The rare, okay, I mean, there are far fewer cars that go up that launch boats. You've got your 6 or 8 or 9 and that's it for the day.
Yeah.
You know, the rest is people with kids.
I don't disagree. I always
But
thought it was a little funny.
It's an issue that I think
Kids then.
deserves being looked at by a wider group.
I do, I agree too.
And coming up with a solution.
No, I think there's a bunch of parking stuff in town that we can all look at.
Yeah.
I'm
Come up with
excited
Oh,
to
no question.
make this
No
more obvious to
question.
people.
yeah, I was surprised there were 200 spots. I didn't realize there were that many.
I just,
You know, and that was when I started putting it together. I said, we don't have a parking issue, we have a parking information
Right.
issue.
I've been saying that
That's a good,
forever.
good
Yeah,
way
you
to
have.
put it.
No, you have.
Like, people don't like to walk.
We still have 2 more items of business to attend to.
Yes.
Sure.
I don't know, is it a Catholic church that's just up,
Shaker Hill.
is it Shaker Hill? Crazy idea. Would they ever allow people to park there at night, not overnight, but just like, I don't know, maybe the,
Interestingly enough, at the last Halloween, there were people who parked in there that got yelled at. And he was wearing a collar.
they don't want to stare at.
I can't tell you. I just, came out in a collar and he yelled at people on Halloween.
It's a good idea. I'm not sure anybody's ever approached.
But it is an interesting thought.
I think they were invited to the parking meeting. I know the Lutheran Church attended the
Okay.
big parking meeting that Rob facilitated a long time ago. The Lutheran Church didn't take a stand in terms of like
Thank
being
you.
a public, but they do
Thank you.
generally allow parking when people do it in a respectful manner.
It's a good report, chief. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on to appointments, town treasurer.
Do you want to stay here and take a piece of paper home or something?
Sure.
No, it's just, I'm gonna make a motion to appoint Sasha Holland, as town treasurer.
Second.
Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Discussion, you say no.
Congratulations. This is
Let her go.
Thank you.
Do you need me to take some further sign?
No, she's got to swear in with Wendy, so.
Yeah.
She's gonna be in tomorrow anyway.
You know,
Have a good night.
All right, and we have a resignation from the Conservation Commission.
I will make a motion to accept the resignation of Carol Wyman with regret and thanks for her service.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Let's see, now that that concludes the business and we are to public comment. Any public comment? David?
Two quick things. One is a save the date and encouragement for and sitting at the table to join us for the candidates forum on Tuesday, March 4th, which is a week before the election. And encourage other candidates who aren't here to join as well. Get in touch with me. I'm handling the preceding arrangements and organization, but will recuse myself since I'm going to be a candidate.
Can you email me specifics? I can put it in the March newsletter.
Oh, sure.
Okay, just get it to me by, say, the 27th.
I'll be there tomorrow.
At what?
Okay.
At what?
7 p.m. to 8:30.
And the location.
And exactly how much time will be allotted depends on how many of the town candidates. School district candidates.
We did that a long time ago and had it.
Where?
John read it for us.
Community building. Snow date the next day.
Did you hear that?
No, we didn't do that. We haven't done it in 25. We have not done this in 25.
That's last year's.
That's not, we misplaced
We
it.
never-
It was all voted, so
It
we
was all
just need
voted.
signatures.
Yeah, but we haven't voted on it in 25.
No, but that's gonna happen in April.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's what I thought. I know we haven't done it. That's what I was saying.
Beginning of April was
The
on the
second-
agenda.
The second thing is that I understand that Lebanon has canceled the community nursing contract. And as I understand it, there's about 2 years funding for that program that has been donated to a number of different individuals and accepted by this committee. Wondering what the plans are, and what the background on that cancellation.
I think the answer right now is that no. They're working on it in the background and, that's in a separate fund, so the money is separately held.
It is a staffing issue,
So,
as is typical with nursing.
and they're
And
working,
Ed has assured us that they're working and looking at the program and trying to come up with a solution.
And we had a legal contract with certain requirements, so it
Yeah.
wasn't that the day they set it, services cut. There are ongoing services.
I would suggest a little bit of town PR might be worthwhile.
That was a.
Hopefully by town meeting, Ed may know something and that would be an appropriate date for him to say so.
Eric, I discussed with Ed about getting an announcement.
Yeah.
out, So. I know he has that on his mind. I had a similar question.
okay. Yeah, but yeah, it is something that's being actively looked at. Other,
Best to get ahead of it.
yeah,
Yeah, but the good part is we were very, very fortunate that Mrs. Byrne was extremely generous and that money is in the bank. It's paid after the fact. We were getting billed. We were not paying in advance.
any other public comments?
I make a motion
Any-
to adjourn.
Okay.
Second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Hi,
Thank you, everybody.
sorry for hustling you, but
That's okay.
I'm like ready for dinner.
That's all right.